Gossip. We've all done it, and we have seen the damage that it can do to culture. Today we are joined by business consultant and our friend, Wulf Tays. Kathy helps us to define what gossip is and who suffers from it in the workplace, and how you can work on eliminating it before it destroys your team. But there is a surprising first step when developing a culture that doesn't tolerate gossip. You are not going to want to miss today's episode on changing gossip culture.
Welcome to the Grounding and Growing Leadership Podcast, where everyone is a leader and leadership starts with you. I'm Tara.
And I'm Pamela.
Thank you for listening and inviting us along on your leadership journey.
We have a special treat for all of our listeners today. Wulf Tays is with us. She is a dear friend, a respected colleague. And to be honest, I'm really excited that she said yes to be a guest on our podcast. And I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. But here's what you need to know about Kathy. For the last 20 years, Kathy's career has been marked by a passion for serving others. By helping organizations develop strong foundations, she has become a leader in customer service, business development, talent management, and culture building. Her willingness to handle difficult situations has made her the go-to resource for organizations looking to address conflict and foster healthy engagement focused on a common goal. Her success stems from a simple belief: give your employees a solid foundation to stand on, and they will drive your organization's success. Welcome, Kathy. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Tara. I'm humbled by that introduction, so thank you.
Can I tell them why I'm maybe surprised and excited that you said yes to being on the podcast?
You certainly can. The better, just so you know.
So when Kathy started her business, KWT, in the beginning, we would talk about marketing and what she needed to do for networking. And she was just so freaking uncomfortable with the thought of promoting herself, her business. She is brilliant at what she does. She will talk about her clients and praise them all day long, but talking about what she does well, it just does not come naturally to Kathy. And so I joked that her business is like a super secret speakeasy. All the cool kids want to be a part of it, but they have to know the password, and that password changes weekly. So you got to be on the inside. All that to say is I think you're a deeply humble person. And so being in the spotlight's hard for you. But today we're going to only talk about you for a little bit, and then we're going to get to talk about your work and why you're so passionate about this work.
Yeah. And I do think you forgot that there is a knock as well, right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the knock.
Know the knock and the password. Nothing's easy with me.
The combo is important.
Yeah. Kathy, I love that we get to share this space together. All the people who I admire, especially in the central Minnesota work area, just have such amazing things to say about you. And we have had coffee maybe once, twice together back in the day, which was really amazing for me as well. And so I got to know you a bit on a personal level, but I would love for our listeners today to get to know, and we want to help them know you through the lens of strengths. And so we're going to start off by having you say your top 5 strengths, and maybe which one that you feel you're most flowing in right now or connecting with right now.
Yeah. And I love that. That's been a connection for Tara and I as well. I've worked for multiple organizations at a corporate level, and strengths has been a foundation as one of those assessments that we use, always top of mind for me. But my strengths in order are connectedness, relator, restorative, adaptability, and belief. And when I went through the questions that you guys sent me just to review, I'm like, I do them all. Like I lean into them all. And I also lean out of them. But the one that is really like, I think top of mind as I duck into it, and particularly with this topic, is connectedness. And the thing that hit me when I was reading it, I wrote it down because of course I have to prepare. If you don't know anything about me, I have to prepare. But it said connectedness is building bridges of understanding between diverse people. And that hit me because I think typically I would say I lean into my restorative because I like to fix things and help people. And I'm also a relator. And Tara once told me that relators have the BS card. So I like that too. Like that doesn't feel right. But connectedness right now, I think, is really front and center for me, particularly in business where we're losing sight of the people in some cases. So connecting and building bridges and minimizing judgment will never eliminate judgment, but we will certainly and can work on minimizing that. And I think connectedness does that.
And I've watched you and witnessed you live out of that space of wanting to build connection in the workplace for a very long time, Kathy. You're so good at bringing in people who are maybe on the fringe or who aren't really sure that they want to be part of that club or they want to be connected. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the speakeasy joke maybe makes this hard, but can you tell us how you got to here? Because we're going to talk today about this gossip training that you've developed that's really effective. And I know there's a lot of people listening who are going to want to know about the training itself and some of the things that you've learned. But how did you get to start your business and how did you evolve it into this place where you're training people on this topic?
I believe I'm blessed in so many ways. And a lot of times we don't see the blessings during the hard times. And I was blessed that I think the right individuals invested in me. They saw something in me that most people or the outside world doesn't. And when you're in a big, huge corporate company, it becomes hard to be seen. And so you work hard, right? I think a lot of us as Achievers say we work hard, right? We know our jobs. But when there's a connection with people, I think that takes a different skill set. And so being in corporate, being able to move up, have people invested, like we build these leadership programs now as consultants, right? All three of us do. And I was just blessed to have that on a platter for me for 20 years, to be able to take assessments and to be able to deal with people all over the world because our company was an international company. And moving up and learning different skills was great, but seeing the differences in people, and particularly because I was a project manager, for lack of better terms, account manager, dealing with clients, like big clients, and just their ugliness sometimes of when there were mistakes and errors, you just learn to navigate that in a different way to find a win. And then the second part of that, like customer service is so important to me. That focus shifted for me as I moved up and moved into leadership and management, that it became not just external customer service that was a focus, but internal customer service. How are we treating each other? How are we treating other departments? Are we working together? Are we aligned? And when there's differences, how do you get through those hard times when it's going to cost money, when emotions are high? And so how do we diffuse those emotions in a way that still allows people to be who they are, if that makes sense? Because a lot of times we say it's not personal, but it is. It's personal because it costs money. It's personal because someone made an error. It's personal because we don't feel good about ourselves. And when you work in a really big company, it's easy to be seen, but yet not. And I don't know if that makes sense, but you are rewarded because you work hard. And so I think the speakeasy for me is more like people should just know what I can do. I shouldn't have to talk about that because it'll be seen. It'll be seen by the right people that are going to give you opportunity to challenge yourself because they see it in you. And I was blessed and am still blessed to have had those people in my life that just lifted me up and challenged me, but they weren't afraid to give me difficult feedback like, Kathy, you are something right now, or you need a timeout. And we need because I am an empath as well. Like I think empathy is like my number 6. And my emotion, as Tara knows, can just like it can get the best of me sometimes. And so having people around you that help you manage that and diffuse that is super healthy. And so that is a long-winded answer for, I don't like to talk about myself because I think and I hope and I pray and I believe that my gifts are seen by the people that need to see them. Yeah. And that doesn't always have to be the world.
Hi, everyone. We're taking a quick break from the podcast because I want to do something without Pamela just to brag on her a little bit because she's not really great at that for herself. You all know and love Pamela. She is a phenomenal coach, counselor, mentor, pastor, and she added another title this year, and she's become an author. And the coolest part is not only will these books bless you, they make phenomenal gifts. In fact, they're perfect for gifting. She's written 2 books that I want to tell you about. One is called Make Good Choices. It's a children's book, but you know the children's books that you read, but as an adult you're thinking, oh, that's really for me. It's a great story from a mentor to a mentee, talking about ways to stay true to ourselves and to make good choices. And we know that you're going to be blessed by the story in reading it to anyone else and gifting it to anyone else. The other book that she's written is a soul care, faith-based journal called Linger in His Presence. And it is about daily reflection and really takes us deeper to connect with our maker. And I really think you're going to love this journal as well. She also has a men's version and a teen version of this journal. So we hope that you will consider looking these up on Amazon, thinking about them as you're thinking about meaningful gifts to give this season. You can go to Amazon or find the links in the show notes. And now back to the podcast.
So good. I'm listening to you and what I'm hearing is, Kathy, you're doing what you can't not do. It's such an overflow. And I'm going to go back even to your top 3 strengths that you talked about, the connectedness, the restorative, the relator, everything that you just spoke to about what was seen in you plays into those strengths, what you can't not do because you see it and then to be able to speak into it. And then people all of a sudden started noticing like, hey, you have eyes to see something different than me. And we need you in this space.
I'm a huge awareness in EQ, social awareness and self-awareness. And I think like that self-awareness is so key in that knowing I knew when I needed to leave corporate. I knew who I was being compromised in a way that didn't feel great. And I'm still a huge advocate for corporate America. I believe in it in multiple ways. But sometimes you just outgrow your company when you outgrow your mentor or your leader and you need to move on and fly, as I call it. And so flying to a smaller company after being in corporate and then flying independently has definitely been a journey. Not always easy, as you guys know as well, but you leave security, not just financial security, but security of friends and collaboration to being really independent. And I think you have to lean into your strengths. You have to lean into who you are and all of those things that keep us grounded. And my belief, that's 5 for me. And I am a strong believer in my faith and in trusting in things beyond our control. And so that has helped me navigate my speakeasy with different knocks and different passwords. And somehow it just keeps happening. So again, I can't say blessed enough.
You also have adaptability in your top 5. And at number 4, adaptability, really the superpower of adaptability, and I've seen it in you, Kathy, is the ability to put your own, not just ability, but almost innate need to put your own needs on hold and off to the side in order to be present for what is needed in the moment, which is beautiful. But I think it also, blending with your belief and probably some of your other strengths, lends itself to this speakeasy of I'm here for who needs me and whatever comes. And it's beautiful. One of the things I love about you is that where some consultants, trainers, facilitators, coaches will shy away from the crabby, difficult, disgruntled, crusty people that are in the back of the room with their arms crossed, a scowl on their face. I've seen you lean in and you make it a goal to work with them. Where do you think you developed that ability to speak to the people who are struggling?
Again, another question that I've just reflected on that I'm like, I don't really know the answer. And yet I think for people that know me, it comes as a shock, not to everybody, but when you talk about my strengths, when we look at my strengths, what is on the outside isn't always what is in the inside, because the basement part of your strengths is that for me is martyrdom, or maybe not really expressing what I'm feeling because I'm adapting or I'm trying to relate. And I have always had the ability to see, I know we call them crusties. I'm trying to think of a different word for people like that because I believe in them, because I am.
So we call them EGRs, extra grace required.
Yeah.
The EGRs.
Because at my worst, I am that.
Mm.
It's like that. I don't want to say split personality, or I often say I have an identity crisis, but I think sometimes it's like we haven't invested. I have said, I've had great mentors. I've had people that have lifted me up and believed in me. And I truly believe beyond a reasonable doubt, those people have not had people that believe in, that have invested in them. And so why wouldn't I? Because 9 times out of 10 in business, what I do see, or in life in general, those are your highest performers. They are your highest performers. And then if there's blame to be had, I blame leadership, because leadership hasn't invested in them, hasn't had honest conversations with them, hasn't maybe said with real directness, because we're so worried about feelings that, hey, you're shutting down the meeting and I'm here to help you. And we use directness as this badge of honor until it doesn't sound positive. And then we don't even have a conversation with those people. We just push the crusties off to the side. Instead of having direct conversation to say, that didn't sound good, and here's why. And I know that wasn't your intent.
And I'm curious, is that sometimes the source of gossip? Is that we're not having the conversation with the person about the things that are frustrating or that we don't understand? Instead, we're having conversations with other people to complain, to vent, and we're making assumptions about what's going on for them.
And we're talking about them. And that just makes my heart hurt, if that makes sense. Where it's like, oh my gosh, Bob did it again. And it's, okay, but did you go talk to Bob? Nope, because you're talking to Sally. Oh, and you're talking to Lucy. Oh, and Kevin got involved as well. Because when you think about it, we don't want people doing that to us. Like, we want people to give us grace. As you said, we want them to give us grace and meet us where we're at. And we don't bother to ask people where they're at, or what triggered them, or what was it in that moment, right? And let's just face it. My statistic might be off, but this is what I live in my Pollyanna world, in my speakeasy. I don't believe that people are intentionally nasty. I believe that 10% are bad, but I don't believe that people are bad by nature. I believe that there's causes of that. And we don't seek to understand that. And believe me, there are people I don't like. There are people I don't respect. But I hope and pray that most of the time I treat them with respect, but I don't let them in, if that makes sense. And so there's boundaries and fine lines that you have to draw with that.
Yeah. And Kathy, we want to go into this training that you're doing on that gossip and how all these other people are talking about them. But since you mentioned that specific scenario of a meeting and how you would go to that person specifically and say, are you aware? Do you discover that there's a common thread? There's a fear underneath what it is that, if you could boil it all down, there's a fear that they're unaware of, or that definitely we're unaware of. Is that a common thread at all as you have those one-to-ones?
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about gossip, but it's singular for me. Defensiveness is a topic of passion for me because, again, it's the crustiness of I can be defensive by nature. And in the research with defensiveness, there's 3 fears that we innately have within us: the fear of competency, the fear of significance, and the fear of likability. And I tend to lean towards competency. So again, with the speakeasy theme, I feel like people should just go on competence. But if they don't, or they ask something in a way that I think challenges or questions my competency, I get super defensive. And then there's 50 behaviors, right? I want the last word. I want to be right. Like some people have physical signs. But I think when it comes to the crusties, likability is their fear, right? That they're difficult, or it takes a lot to like them. Blessings from heaven, right? I am blessed that all of my life, I've been blessed with friends and family that I have never had to be challenged with being loved or liked. Not all the time do people like me, but that hasn't ever been my fear. It's not driven by likability. And I think when you have a harder personality because of people's past, because of whatever they've experienced, then we put them in a box. We stereotype them as difficult employees. But they're not idiots. They know you don't like them.
Yeah.
They're self-aware. So I think the more they realize that, sometimes it becomes like, I don't know, I'm going to talk in circles here, but they're so unaware. They're just matter of fact. They're making a comment in the meeting. Like, why would we do that? That doesn't even make sense. And all of a sudden, all of us Pollyannas in the room have shut down. We're like, goes Bob being negative again.
Mm.
But Bob, what he's saying is probably real. And we probably should be listening because he's done the research. He just can't articulate it.
I do think, Kathy, we want someone like Bob to bring his opinion through a filter or to have it framed in a way that's more likable or palatable. But if their fear is that I'm already not liked, there's a self-protection there, and you get sharper, ironically, not more likable in that fear.
And then they say, what's the big deal? I'm right. And we're like, yep, you are right. And then what they say is, if Tara would have said that, you would have listened. And they're not wrong.
They're not wrong. Yeah.
So then it becomes this, because Tara, you like Tara.
And we do have likability biases in the workplace.
Oh, yeah.
We do have respect biases in the workplace. People that we respect, people that we like, we listen to. And then who are we not listening to in the workplace because of the package or because of the framing?
Yeah. And I think the biggest compliment I can get, and only by the grace of God, is when you work with someone and they call you and they say, your voice was in my head. Your voice was in my head. Don't talk. And that makes me feel good because we don't spend the time with them to teach them the mechanisms, just like we all do, that when we're feeling defensive or we're not feeling competent or significant or liked, we've been through professional training. We have all these people that have invested in us, that have helped us to know our truth, but who's ever helped them know their truth?
Yeah. So these scenarios can bring about the gossip where we're talking about Bob instead of to Bob. But let's back up a little bit because there's lots of different scenarios where gossip comes in, right? There's where there's frustration, but there's other scenarios. I want to back up even more, Kathy, and let's lay the foundation. What is gossip at its core? What is gossip? And why is it not good for a team? That might seem obvious for anyone listening, but I want to be explicit.
Yeah, and really great question. As part of the training, I don't know if you guys ever work with Mentimeter, but I love it because you can do in real time surveys, but you can ask open-ended questions. And for the training, I'll send out some pre-work and they have to watch a couple of videos and we'll talk about those. But I have them define gossip, their version of gossip, and then you review it as the icebreaker. And what is fascinating about the word gossip is that there are slight differences in every definition. It's amazing. So when you think about that, what's the cliche these days? Words are important. So what might mean gossip to me might not be gossip to Tara. And we all put a different value or level of importance and effect on gossip.
It's like trust, where everyone defines it differently. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so when you ask what the definition of gossip is, it can take on a couple of different meanings, right? Like people think of toxicity, anything that you say that's toxic.
Yeah.
Slander, right, can be considered gossip. Talking about something that is not work-related in the workplace. Oh my gosh, did you see Tara at dinner last night? Gossip, right? And those are, I think, the type of things we think of. But Dave Ramsey, you guys probably know Dave Ramsey. He's actually known for his financial, guru-ness. But he actually has some amazing videos because he has a no gossip policy at his company. It's super intense, right? But what I love is his definition of gossip. And it is discussing anything negative with someone who can't help solve the problem.
Mm.
It's so good because here's where I love this. If you can get past the intensity sometimes of his videos, and they're out there on YouTube. When you think about that and you walk out of a meeting or you're at dinner with friends or whatever that may look like, when we get out of that meeting and we say, I cannot believe that decision was made. I do not agree with that decision. That could be considered gossip because I am now talking about something with someone who can't either help me get through my lack of understanding, can't help me. I'm not going to the source, right? I'm just venting and I'm complaining, and that can be toxic because what happens is, if you think about, I'm rounding here, but the circle, gossip is the action. Defensiveness is the reaction, and distrust is what happens. So I walk out of that meeting, I'm talking to Tara about how I don't like the situation, right? Or I don't agree with what the CEO said or the director or whoever it may be. Now we are, I think Brene Brown word, hot wiring this connection because Tara's saying, yep, me too. And yet we didn't speak up in the meeting.
We said nothing.
We said nothing. But yet we're going to blame the CEO. We're going to blame whoever said it. And yet we didn't do anything. We didn't say anything. We didn't voice anything.
And we're not going back now to say, hey, I didn't speak up, but.
And guess what happens? Then we might say it to our teams. Here's what we're doing. However, I don't agree with it, but this is what Bob said we're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Right?
That creates
disconnection. Now those people go, right? All of a sudden, what was the can? Remember when we were kids? We
gave a telephone?
Yeah, telephone. Now it's so skewed and nobody's following the initiative because they're just doing it.
This culture then actually is fostering that distrust that you talked about and that third result. Can you go back, Kathy, and just speak again to the gossip, the defensiveness, and the distrust? You said there was an action and a reaction. I'd love to just revisit that quickly because it's so powerful and it's repeatable and we can see it within ourselves.
Yeah. So the gossip is the actual action. So, right, we're physically talking, speaking, doing something, right?
Yeah.
Defensiveness is the reaction, right? We're reacting to something. Defensiveness is protecting ourselves from a fear, right? And then the distrust becomes the result. The result of the reaction and the action is now there's a little sliver of distrust for me with you or with the situation or with the department.
And without knowing it, the person who is starting that gossip, what they're doing is telling me something about them. They're showing me that if you're talking to me about someone else, you will be talking to someone else about me. You're also planting a seed of distrust within me, or you're wanting to, or within whoever's at the table for the conversation. And eventually, a whole culture of distrust can happen. And it started with that seed of gossip.
Yeah. And I think that's why you can't have one conversation without the other. So everything leads back to trust. And so we all put a different value on trust and reliability versus the vault versus Brene Brown does a great job. Feldman does a great job. Stephen Covey. Like trust is such a big topic. But the bottom line is that gossip, it's a flame, right? And it's going to create distrust. And let me just say, because the company I work with a lot with gossip, we love this line because you have your optimist in an organization, you have your realist, which I'm a realist, and you have your pessimist. And the optimists are always like, yes, let's attack gossip. It's going to be great. The realists are like, yep, we should, and it's never going to go away. And the pessimists are like, why are we even doing this? It's always going to be around. And that's true.
Yeah.
It's true. The goal is not to eliminate gossip because you never will, because we're human and we all do it. Like I can preach it because I live it. I can talk about it because I do it, and you don't want to be a hypocrite. So you get up and you're like, this is just like conviction when you talk about it, because it goes to your self-awareness. So the goal is never to eliminate. It is to minimize it. And it starts with us. Because I don't get to change Tara. I don't get to change Pamela or Bob. I only get to control me and how I participate or don't participate in the gossip.
Okay, so there are people listening right now, Kathy, who are thinking, I got to send this to XYZ. I got to send this to Mary, John, and Peter. And what you're saying is maybe take a step back and ask yourself if you are contributing to this problem somewhere as well.
That's right. John Maxwell says, as you're reading one of his leadership books, if you're thinking about someone else right now, put this book down and reflect on yourself. And that has always stuck with me, because I think at the moment I was reading that, I was thinking of someone else. So, of course, it's so real. Like, we don't always understand our role. And our role in creating defensiveness or lack of trust in others.
Yeah. So we're going to pick up there in part 2. So we're just getting started with this topic of gossip. We want to dive deeper, talk a little bit more about some of the insidious impacts of gossip on teams, but also what are some things people can do if they want to start really making progress on this in their culture. Kathy, and we can't wait to have you join us for part 2. Stay tuned, everyone.
Come on.